Brandon, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you. Good to be in studio with you.
Yeah, I'm excited for today.
I am as well. Our guest here in studio, Rajiem Seabrook, has been on my, he's on my A-list of we got to get him on the podcast.
Yeah, you've talked about him for a long time.
Yeah.
He's got a little crush on you, in case you didn't know.
It's mutual. It's mutual on him and his family and his brother and dad.
We go way back. I don't know if you know where the story started with you and I. My earliest memory of you was you were officiating 3-on-3 basketball tournament at the mall.
The old school when the YMCA did it. Way back.
Southgate
Mall Classic.
Way back. That's one of my earliest memories. And then just the way life works, passive, cross, and intertwined consistently over the last 20 plus years.
Yeah, man.
So happy to have you here. I kind of hijacked your whole, hey, good morning.
That was great.
So here we are.
Yeah. Well, let's start here. How'd you get to Missoula?
Well, I've officially spent half my life here in Missoula, Montana. I turned 50 years old last month, February. Really proud of that achievement because I'm originally from New York City, born and raised. Grew up in a split household between Brooklyn, New York, and Hell's Kitchen, and have a very interesting dichotomous background as far as family is concerned. My father's side of the family was very much like the Huxtables before the Huxtables were the Huxtables, right? Black, Catholic, affluent, very community involved. And then my mom's side of the family was from the South Bronx, very impoverished, grew up in the housing project. So growing up, I was too poor for my rich friends and too rich for my poor friends. And the abilities to kind of have to be transmorphic between communities like that started at an early age because of the differences in communities being raised. But due to those differences, I saw how people were living and how people were surviving, and a distinct difference between the two. My grandfather and grandmother and aunts and uncles were all very involved in the church and in communities. So I watched how they help nature and nurture the communities that my mother grew up in. And it was just like, how does this work? Or how does this not work when you're only separated by a highway and a few miles? So at an early age, I saw disparities between people. And even growing up in middle school, something in me innately said, be something for someone else always, even if it's at your own chagrin. And from that point on, I had really immersed myself in community relations, church relations, interfaith collaborations, sports, academia, and everything, that offshoots and popcorns in and out of. Graduated from high school, went to college. Midway through my sophomore year, my stepmom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, went back home. She passed away. Dad passed away within a year of her passing. So at this point, I'm 25 years old. My mind is swirling. I don't know what to do. Lost my parents. I am now, a pseudo dad to 3 younger brothers. And my grandfather, who is the patriarch, my dad's dad, said, do what you need to do. We're going to have these services, but you're not going to care for your brothers. You're a young man, go and live your life. And I had friends that were living here in Missoula, Montana, that I used to think was Southwest Canada. And 2 of them, our fathers all grew up together back home. And when they came back for the funeral, my friend Josh said, hey, what are you doing? What are you going to do? This is life shattering, life altering, life changing. What are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. He said, come out to Montana. And I said, what? He said, just come out to Montana. So I came out August of 98 and rode the bus cross country, and then got to North Dakota and said, I just need to rent a car. I can't be on this bus anymore. And then drove into Montana and didn't know what I was getting into. And then my first stop was Miles City. And then the next stop was Butte. And then the next stop was Missoula, Montana. And my buddy met me, and I, for the first time in a long time, I exhaled. There was something about the way Missoula felt, the way Missoula looked, the streets. I almost had like this out of body experience. Like I felt myself decompress for the first time in like a year. And I said, that's different. And met a beautiful young woman just north of here from St. Ignatius, and fell in love with life in a different way. Montana has this ability to give you a certain perspective and an amount of levity that I've never acquired anywhere else in this world. And I just knew right then and there, I said, this is it. Within, I would say maybe 3 weeks of being here, which was only supposed to be 10 days initially, but it became 3 weeks.
That's fascinating. Because I mean, most of the stories you hear, people come here, especially from like the city, from New York. I mean, there's some culture shock. Like, this isn't normal. This isn't real life. I'm an outsider. So to hear your perspective of, hey, you knew immediately that this was home and you could breathe.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think it was? What was it about Missoula, the shift for you that caused you to settle and say, hey, this is where I'm supposed to be?
I'm going to answer that in two responses. Being from New York, you're able to adapt anywhere on the planet.
Sure.
That's the beauty of being from New York is, life changes every 3 blocks. So you have to know how to be adaptable. You can go from, gutter broke to bougie within 90 yards, and knowing how to navigate those waters is sometimes a survival tactic. So for me, it became an instant feeling of, I didn't have to feel that way when I was here. I didn't have to kind of watch my six, so to say. I didn't feel that need to survive. It was like, I can live. And that's something we spoke about pre-record. Like there's a distinct difference. Yeah. And I accepted the fact that I was ready to live and stop surviving.
Culturally, was it difficult for you?
I think culturally it's everywhere is different. Missoula is different than Hamilton, and they're only 45 minutes away.
I probably stereotype. You came in here, I'm in high school, you're 25 years old, dreads. I probably thought you played for the New York Giants when you came here. Like, what's this guy doing in Missoula?
No, I did play football for a really long time, but culturally speaking, it was different. It was a shift. But like once you go outside of New York City, like upstate New York, you can almost mirror aspects of living. So for me and my travels, like I was used to rural settings. I was used to having space because of the privilege my father's side of the family afforded me. Like this wasn't foreign territory to me. Montana, yes, but like Rocky Mountains, rural settings, no. And I through my own travels and experience, was allowed to have that. So it wasn't such a sharp culture shock or a culture clash for myself.
What did you go to college and get educated in? And what were you doing for a career at the time when you came out to Montana to get a little breather? How did that all mesh together?
Social work. That's what I went to school for. And at the time when I moved here, I was working at the YMCA and finishing school. Again, anything that I've done has always been surrounded by athletics, academics, community, and creating the overlap, because you don't have athletics without academics. You don't have academics without community. You don't have community without the people. So being able to put all of that together has always been an aim and a goal for me to always be involved in that way. I was working at the Y, running a kinder care program and officiating and coaching, and then later group homework for years with then Aware, and then what used to be Missoula Youth Homes, which is now Youth Homes Incorporated. For years, worked in both of those systems. And then again, just peripherally, always working within church systems, athletic systems, or academic systems, whether it's mentoring, public speaking, or anything along those lines. And then for almost 14 years, I sat for years at Western Montana Mental Health Center and was a clinical case manager, and then later a supervisor, where I spent the bulk of my 15 of my 25 years was spent there. Realizing that even though I enjoyed athletics and academics, Missoula on a mental health note was not the healthiest it could have been, and realizing the need to take care of the needs in the home, within the community, to make a stronger kid who wants to play a sport, who wants to go to school and do those things, and just seeing those puzzle pieces and wanting to help in that way. And as Mr. Smith noted, having the connections that I've had, affording the people that I was working with and essentially for other options and ways of being. And then that sadly all ended when COVID began rather, because Western Montana was a Medicaid-based operation. Medicaid stopped for a minute when the world stopped. So didn't know what was going on. And at the time I was doing a lot of collaborative work with the Missoula Food Bank, basically trying to keep services going for our clients, but also trying to help in my own way save jobs for the department that I was working in. And I did this great cross collaborative project with the food bank that then led to me working at the food bank amidst COVID and shifting lenses there. And then working at the food bank, I did a presentation for Empower Montana that led to me being at Empower Montana. So everything I've done is popcorned into like reallocating myself into helping peoples of all walks of life be in a healthier situation and community. So to make a short story long, that's it in its nutshell. And go ahead.
Why do you do what you do?
Why do I do what I do? I solely blame my grandparents for that. My grandmother on my father's side was a teacher, and my grandfather was the deacon of our church, one of the first Black police officers of the Bronx in that area, the area in which they lived. So I had role models that helped pave the way for me and my brothers and people of my community and my background. And I couldn't not continue that. If not for community support, I may not be sitting in this chair across from you discussing that. So I do what I do to carry on the legacy set before me by my grandfather, but I also do what I do because, I give a damn about people.
Yeah.
And I think often in this world, everyone wants to gripe about things or complain about things or give voice to things, but rarely do they want to do the things. And I don't ever want to be a person who says, I didn't do this, or I could have did this, or I should have did this, or I would have did this. My grandfather instilled in me, are you going to be a man of regret, or are you going to be a man of memory? And when he said that, I didn't understand that until later. And I said, I don't want to have regrets. I want to have those memories. I did do this. I was able to do that. Even if I failed, I still put forth the effort.
Yeah.
And I also do it because there's, now being a father and knowing other fathers, there are kids behind me.
Oh.
Right. There was a path laid before me for me to walk down. Wasn't always smooth and nice, but I gotta leave something behind me that's nicer than what was set before me. So
what for you at the end of the day, you lay down, put your head on your pillow, is a win, a success. Like today was a win for me. How do you define that?
I'm alive. That's a win.
Oh.
The fact that I have light in my eye and breath in my lungs, that's a success. The fact that I grew up in New York in a very violent, crime-ridden, drug pandemic, AIDS-riddled decade, and I've lived past life expectancy of 26, and I've made it to 50, that's a win. The fact that I have people interested in wanting to hear about me from different backgrounds and walks of life is a win.
Oh.
The fact that my children are beautiful, gifted, obnoxiously spoiled and loved is a win.
No kidding.
Yeah, man. It's
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's all a win.
You have such incredible experience with all the things that you've done in the community and giving back and trying to help people. And like you said, giving a damn about people. I'm interested in what you said about Missoula having a mental health problem. And would you say that this is distinct to Missoula? Or, I mean, overall, I know there's a big mental health problem in America, but what is it in this community that seems to be the problem that you've encountered in your experience? And maybe what are some of the ways that you're trying to be about changing that and helping people?
I think a lot of things, when you use the word mental health, there's an instant like stigma and sometimes visceral reactions that come from that. because people want to think about it in a clinical setting. What's wrong with you? And my brother, who is a brilliant, brilliant man, said in a podcast interview that I listened to a couple of weeks ago on Spotify that it's not what's wrong or what's happened. It's how did we get here, which changes how you feel about things, right? If you fall down and I meet you in the emergency room, you break your leg, and I say, what happened? You're going to look at me and say, hey, Rajiem, I broke my leg. What happened? That's obviously what happened. But if I say, hey, how did you get here? I got here because I climbed up on a ladder that I didn't secure to the house because my partner said I needed to. Now you have a narrative, right? Now you have an explanation. There's a rhyme and reason. And for me, it's always been that ability to find that rhyme within that reason, to be organized within the confusion, to create polarity, to cull out things, to say, okay, it's not just mental health. It's my mental health is usurped because my car isn't working. My mental health isn't there because my kid is now getting C's instead of B's. My mental health is usurped because gas is now $3.59 as opposed to $3.39. And realizing that all those things erode someone's mental health or sometimes amplify being healthy mentally, right? So you got to reverse that, and understanding that there's so many key components that make up a person's mental health or mental well-being. Missoula, going back to your inquiry of origin, there's a lot of stigma around mental health. There's a lot of misconceptions around mental health. There's a lot of lack of ability and accessibility, especially in places that are rural, like Montana, or siloed between cities for access and services. So that creates greater stresses, which erodes at the mental health. Missoula in particular is tough because we have a very quick growing population, and services are sometimes limited. Services are sometimes hard and accessible due to policies, procedures, and laws. So it makes it tough. Also, if you get help for your mental health and you're working an hourly job, you just lost a third of a day just getting helped. So now you sacrifice your mental health to make sure your financial and, culinary health at home is there, right? So there's a lot of, we live in a society where we have the ors. We don't have a lot of ands. I want to go to school and work and go see a therapist. We live in a society where I got to go to work or go see my therapist. My kid has to do soccer or go to an after school program. Can't ever do both, right? So it's hard because world is hard. It's hard because accessibility is a speed bump for anyone and everyone. Stigmas are hard. We live in Montana where, men are tough, and you don't talk about emotion, and you suppress it. You suppress it by drinking. You suppress it by smoking. You suppress it by four-wheeling. But when you put all three of those together, that's why we have so many fatalities and so many emergency rooms, so many missing fingers and all those things. We're taught as men, it's better to be angry than it is to be sad.
Yeah.
So we then now suppress our primary emotion to just be angry, right? Because we're angry, we're sad. We're angry, we're frustrated. We're angry, we're lonely. We're angry, but we're not dealing with the mental health aspect of being sad or being anxious or being afraid or we just want to be mad about it. So we're not even addressing like our primary things, which erodes our mental health, right? There's so many factors. I don't want to go. Yeah. I don't want to go to that rabbit hole too far. I got Alice in the Dormouse here, so I don't want to go too far. But yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of factors.
Yeah.
Let's transition here real quick. Go to our rapid fire questions here on the podcast. Rajiem, you drove into Missoula, Montana, 1998. What was your first memory of Missoula?
Okay, my first memory was I had just come from Butte, and I was like, someone named this town Butt, right? And then I drive through Bonner, and I'm like, oh my God, what is this about? Like, what are these town names? And like, what I just thought, like, who names their places after body parts? Like, I just wasn't used to that. I just thought that was really, really funny. And what I initially thought. So you got to realize this is like mid to late August, and both mills are still working. So all of a sudden I get out of the car and I'm like, what is that smell that I can kind of taste, but kind of feel like in the air? I had never lived where there were pulp mills. So I was like, how is this beautiful town just caught in this like biosphere? And then I'm like, why does it smell like there's wood burning? So I had all this like sensory, because I had now experiencing like my first taste of like what forest fires were. So I had all these like sensations, like the smell of timber and pulp and forest fires and the Clark Fork River, which was not as clean as it is these days. So I was just like, oh my gosh, this kind of feels like a mountainous Cleveland all of a sudden, right? But then my first stop is I went to Charlie B's at the Dinosaur Cafe, and I had a catfish po' boy. And I had two gentlemen who looked like they had just walked out of a 1940s movie, sit down and ask me all these questions because they were kind of passing through town. And then Charlie B's back in the day was more like almost like a social club. Like people, like the locals went there. So all of a sudden I'm talking to, people who have worked at this mill, and I'm third generation Montana. I'm like, this is my third day in Missoula. And I was like, this is very different. I said, this is cool. Mm-hmm. My family was concerned because they thought Montana was like the South. Mm-hmm. So I was like, this isn't what I thought other people thought this place was going to be, let alone my own perspective. And I said, this is different. And then I went across the street to the Iron Horse, and it was like a totally different vibe there. And I was like, whoa, this is super cool. Then I went to, and it was my first, I had just had the catfish po' boy, but I was still hungry. And I went to Double Front Chicken. I was like, oh, dude, I'm in.
Trifecta.
I'm in, dude. Like, hi, Missoula. This is home. What I loved about Missoula when I first got here, people were nice. We're just nice. Like being from New York, you look at someone in the eye, it's almost passive confrontation. Mm. Or you're waiting to see who has the more dominant stare down. Here, people looked at you in the eye and they're like, hi. And like, I was trying to avoid it. Like, no, hi, I'm over here. And just the welcoming was awesome. And you can always tell when someone's not from a place, and the questions, some probing, were really coming from a place of curiosity, which due to my background, they're usually questions that are surrounded in judgment. Mm. And they're not based in curiosity or innocence of mind. It's to either feed in or feed off of your preconceived notions. So it's nice to have that those inquiries come from what I deem an innocent place of curiosity, which you don't get every day in life. And it was just beautiful, man. I had never seen a place dissected by three rivers outside of Pittsburgh, so that was really cool. And Missoula continues to be such a bright gem in my mind's eye, historically and currently.
You so told us what your first memory was, what you love most about it. What continues to be the weirdest thing about Missoula to you?
I think currently what's the weirdest part to me, and it's I'm not sure if it's akin to Missoula or Montana or just humans or maybe Americans, secular to Americans. In the last 20 years, we've seen a great change in the demographics of Missoula, and that I don't care about. What I care about is when you leave a place for a reason, you don't bring that place with you to recreate it, right? So what's weird about it is I see people complain about traffic or speeding, and then the next thing you know, they're speeding to create the traffic. We're bringing a lot of the issues that none of us want here to the forefront. Like I was driving down Wyoming Street the other day, and all of a sudden I can't see the west, like where the peace sign would be. Like the sky is being blotted out. Whereas the people who created that building and moved here in their origin moved here because you saw the sky, because you had vast views, because it was wide open, and now you want to enclose it between steel and glass for the sake of capitalism. You're recreating what you dislike. And Missoula and Bozeman to some extent are becoming like the blueprints for that. Like we're becoming little Aspen, we're becoming little Denver, we're becoming little Seattle, we're becoming little Portland. And what makes Missoula is being eroded quickly, passively and assertively. So I would say that is my biggest thing is keep Missoula. And that also shows my ageism. Keep Missoula the way it is. Like, that's just showing my.
You're 50 now.
I'm 50 now.
It is.
It is. Hey. But it's one of those.
Stay off my lawn.
Hey, I'll collect the tears in a vial. But it just shows there's some change that isn't always for the better.
Yeah. So
I would say that would be my biggest thing. That and I don't know, man. The Grizz need to win a national championship. We've been in a drought,
Sweet.
man. Just need some hardware, baby.
What zip code do you live in? What part of town are you in?
59801.
Ooh.
The OG.
Yeah, man.
OG.
Oh yeah.
As long as I've known you, you have been a big coffee drinker. In fact, today you've got coffee on coffee.
Yes.
What's your go-to coffee shop in Missoula?
Oh, okay. That's a interesting question. If I want a good Americano, my favorite place to get a good Americano is Liquid Planet at the Book Exchange. My favorite French press is Green Source. And then my favorite just black drip, Bernice's Bakery.
What?
Hands down.
All right.
Yeah.
That was a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's all three very different types, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
Where's your go-to restaurant in Missoula? I know that's really tough to decipher, but you can give a couple if you need.
Well, obviously, Double Front.
I'll give it, Double Front, like that definitely has lodged a great place in my heart and an artery. It's a great place. Actually, one of my favorite places, old school of all time, is River City Grill.
Oh yeah. It's a gem.
It's a gem. Some of my fondest memories in life with people have been sharing meals there. It was always a nice place because you could walk in and just eat and not walk into 30 people that that interrupts your ability to eat. So yeah, River City Grill and then Despo's. I mean, it's Missoula staple, man.
Wings and sports.
Hey, baby. You know it.
It's good stuff.
Hey, spicy teriyaki. On any day that ends in Y. Let's go.
What do you love the most about Missoula?
Missoula's pliability to its needs of its people. Missoula, and I know some people listening to this may react viscerally to this word, but the inclusivity that exists in Missoula is so wonderful. Even if you're not down with something, it exists for someone else to be down with.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to like it. You don't have to put yourself out there. But if you're willing to stretch and learn something outside of your own perspective, it's there and it's available. Missoula, to me, is such a diverse place. And I know that people automatically equate that with race, but we live in a diverse place due to age, demographics, point of origin, boot style, sneaker style, Curry's versus Jordans, like all the things that make people who they are. And there's more of that here than people are willing to look at because they just want to look at the outside.
And why would anybody ever wear Curry's? I mean,
I don't know.
Let's be real.
I don't know, son. You know me. I know you. Your sneaker game is just, I don't know. There's like 5 dudes in Missoula where I'm like, might give me a run for my money in that sneaker game. You're one of them.
You had some pretty sick Jordans on the other day. So
that's funny because I thought about wearing Jordans today. I was like, it's Monday. I can't wear sneakers on Monday, but I was thinking about wearing an old pair of Kobe's to appease to you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
You were thought of.
Thank you.
Is there any specific book that has transformed your life or made the most profound impact on your journey in your life?
The 3 most important books in my life that I still read once a year, every year. Autobiography of Malcolm X, Catcher in the Rye. And then I flipped back and forth between Alice in Wonderland, which is a phenomenal book about choices. And then I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings. And those are like the books that help create my mom. Oh, and The Art of War, which is like always in a pocket somewhere. In The Art of War. And the reason why I love all of those books is it's all about choice and change. Change your choices. And sometimes your choices will change you. And, you know, anyone that's read Catcher in the Rye, Holden Caulfield, it's all about transformative change. Malcolm X is one of our greatest historical, let alone Black historical figures that have changed from criminal to religious leader to reform leader to just human activist, like transformative change. Alice in Wonderland, it's about change and control. It's not about drugs and drug references. It's about, did I eat too much or eat too little? Learning how to control your choices and then dealing with the ramifications behind them. And yeah, those are my books of choice.
That was incredible.
I love how every one of your answers is, so it's not just off the cuff, it's deep. There's reason and intentionality behind everything you do. And so my last question for you, I know the answer to this, but I think it'd be great for the podcast. Why don't you run for mayor of Missoula, Montana?
You've asked me this,
I'm asking a much bigger question than why you run for mayor, but you're so involved, connected, your heart for the community, the heart for our people.
Because I think by becoming a politician, it robs me of some of that. It robs me of some of those connections, because then I love being a very dichotomous person and polarizing, but I don't want to be polarized by a position. I don't want that label of mayor or city council to create an expectation for someone else. Also being a politician, I love my family and friends too much for them to be targets of something that I can be scrutinized within. They don't deserve that. I can do more and have done more in my stations in Missoula than I could ever as a politician.
And you're doing a lot right now. I want to talk about a little bit about what you're doing at Empower Montana. You're on ESPN radio.
Yep.
You're coaching your own kids' sports, basketball, AAU. You're coaching high school football.
Yep.
So you are investing in next generation while currently investing in current generations. What is it that, why sports? Most of your time is around sports, whether you're on the air with ESPN from a Grizz game to coaching your own kids at AU or a Friday night under the lights game.
My buddy Coulter and I talk about this all the time. Sports venues are the most diverse environments you will ever go into. If you go to an NBA game and you look at the demographics, it's diverse. You go to a Grizz game, it's the most diverse place in the state of Montana. And again, sans race, sports bring out the most integration of people. Poor people, rich people, old people, young people, men, women, whatever your identifying factors are. Sports and competition bring people together unlike anything else. Sans music, When you go to a gathering, like when I saw you, if I'm not working the game as a broadcaster, I spend less time watching the game. I see you, I see your son, I see your brother, I see people from this church, I see people from that mosque, I see people from Lewistown, I see people from Havre, and all of a sudden, we're all in the same building for the same reason. No other time do you get that. And half the people are in for one team, the other people are there for the other, but we're all there for one common good game. And no one cares about how much money you have in your pocket. No one cares about where you grew up, who you're rooting for, why are you rooting for them. And that gives people something to talk about that isn't as painful as the realities of life, right? It's also one of the few vehicles that allows people self-expression. I don't care how many times we play basketball against each other, Mr. Smith. how you play is unique to you and how I play is unique to me. And to see that uniqueness translate on a court or a field or a pitch, that's beautiful, man. Watching someone individually, Bob Ross, stroke their own canvas is amazing, right? We talked about Kobe and LeBron, two very different guys, but how they paint their game is beautiful, and sports brings that about in the youth. It's one of the few platforms they could just be themselves, admits a construct of the game or their coaches' philosophies.
I've never heard it said like that. That was
Every one of his answers is deep, very thought through.
That was incredibly
Very
powerful.
Yeah.
And I think you just gave words to what most of us love about competition in sports.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Empower Montana.
Yes.
What are you doing there? What's on the horizon?
Anything they ask me to. No, Empower Montana is an amazing organization. It's celebrating its 25th year of existence. They have consistently tried to build a more inclusive and just world for anyone and everyone, more specifically the youth. A lot of times we, going back to mental health, we want to deal with things when we're 35 and 45 and 55. Why not deal with it when you're 12 and 13?
Mm-hmm.
You may not be dealing with it as heavy by the time you're 35. Mm-hmm. So building curriculum and affinity spaces for the youth to be heard, for them to be active in legislation and their, respective microcosmic pods of the Missoula community. It's really important. We also do a lot of work with organizations, businesses, and institutions to help not necessarily change minds, but change hearts. If I change your heart, by proxy, your mind will change. If I change your mind and you're not feeling it, it ain't going anywhere. So understanding that the work that we do is more heartfelt, which then, again, by proxy, will change your mind. Thinking about things from a different frame of reference is really important. And that's what we ask people to do as well. So when we're doing political consultation, academic consultation, institutional consultation, we do a lot of inward and then outward. And then that changes how those organizations now see the community, how they may donate the money, how they may reallocate the funds, because it's a different way of seeing things that wasn't just secular to what you just know, your own biases.
That's interesting. I love hearing that. I, in my own life, my own journey growing up, maturing just in recent years, have found I've changed opinions on things because it just didn't feel right. I had all the head knowledge, like what you just talked about, but it wasn't there in my heart. And then when my heart is there, things start connecting. You start seeing things differently. And I don't know if it's a sign of maturity or not, but sometimes we have to unlearn some things or go back and ask, why? Was it just because this is what I told I believe, or worldview? And just in my own life, Steve and I, we talk off there all the time about just seeing things differently from a spiritual perspective, a business perspective, as a father's perspective. So it's fascinating that the approach you guys take is through the heart, because it makes sense. Seems like that would work.
I love what you just said. It reminds me of one of my favorite movie quotes of all time, when Yoda tells Luke in Empire Strikes Back, you must unlearn everything you've learned in order to learn again. Yeah. Like a lot of what we've been told, it's from a very jaded point of view. We're taught a certain way in this country and our communities to only think in a certain way. There's this whole other scope, this whole other way of seeing things or listening to things or hearing things that we don't actively engage in. And when we do, it authentically engages us differently, right? If I think all purple paisley colored people are one way, but I've never interacted with them, and then I finally do, it changes my engagement. Right. It changes how I feel in my heart, which now changes how I think. When we think about things, you can compartmentalize everything. When I think about things, I sometimes dehumanize a person, but when I feel them, I rehumanize, and it changes things. We need to get back to a part of feeling and understanding our thinking are sometimes two separate spheres that need to come together. You
alluded to this earlier, that you're paying it forward or giving back, or maybe paying a debt off that your grandparents, the community service, the heart that they had. And when I'm hearing from you telling us what Empower Montana does, I'm sure that you're running into obstacle and an obstacle every day. What is this thing that keeps you going, positive, passionate about helping and changing people? I mean, I know you're paying it forward, but what keeps getting you out of bed every morning, excited about what you're doing?
That's funny. My son, we had dinner with Sammy Akem, and he asked my son that about football, and he totally like lawyered, reverbed. He goes, "Well, why do you do what you do to get out of bed for work every day?" And hearing an 11-year-old say that to a room full of adults was very powerful, and it made me think. Externally, the motivation is first and foremost my children. Like, I want them to live a better life than I ever had. And children that look like my children, I want them to have a better life because they inevitably will have a harder life due to their marginalization factors of their backgrounds. Internally, I do it because it's the right thing to do. Sadly, a little over 3 years ago, I got divorced, and hard thing. But it made me realize I need to do things differently, but not necessarily better. Because if I do things differently, then I am doing better. If I say, Brandon, I need you to do your job better, that already indicates that you've messed up somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But if I say, hey, Brandon, let's do this differently, ooh, there's a difference. And I realized that with all my good intentions, I need to do things differently, which is what keeps me motivated. It's what keeps me energized. I need to do this differently because it will predicate a better outcome for something else or for someone else or for myself. So yeah, those are the factors. Internally, just need to do different and to do better. And then externally, it's about the kids, man. It's about your kids, my kids, your nieces, your nephews, your neighbors' kids. Just building a better world. Out of the immortal words of Q-Tip, progression won't be made if we're separate forever. Because collectively, if we come together, we will prosper, and not always financially, just prosper spiritually or mentally or emotionally. Yeah,
it's good. Wow. Dude, well, thank you for coming on, taking time away from all that you got going just to speak with us and share your story. Just, I admire you and
thank you.
Appreciate you, and honestly love you, man. You're doing
back.
some amazing things, and you're always up, always positive, always making an impact and difference, and you've made a greater impact on my life than you may ever realize. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. I when you said what you said about Southgate, I suppressed the tears and just coming full cipher. Thanks for bringing me back to a different time and not knowing that was then, that you were such I hate to say it, a boy.
Yeah.
And knowing that I influenced you then, and then 10 years after that to play football with you, and then 20 years after that, here we are. It's thank you, man. That's you never know how you impact a person until they let you know. And to hear that literally like damn near 25 years to the date is that's powerful. So thank you, man. I appreciate that a lot. A lot to think about.
It was so nice to meet you.
Thank you, man. Honor and a pleasure. Be well, gentlemen. Be well.
You as well.
What's up, Missoula? This is Nick Balla, producer of the Missoula podcast. We truly appreciate you hanging out with us as we dive into the stories that make our city special. If you could do us a quick favor and follow the show wherever you are listening, whether that's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, maybe you're watching on YouTube, so hit that little subscribe button. It really helps us out. Head on over to www.themissoulapodcast.com for more information, and we'll see you next week.